So my name is Natalie Kaminski. I am a founder and CEO of a company called JetRockets, where we build custom software, web, and mobile applications. We specifically focus on working with non-tech founders and bridging the gap between the tech world and the non-tech world, helping people who may not have a very extensive technical background still pursue and make their dreams come true in the tech world. So, and in this series of upcoming interviews, I'll be talking to several of our founders and companies we've helped launch their tech platforms, asking them to share their experience. And today I'm happy to present Joshua Johns. So Joshua, please introduce yourself. Tell us about your company, EventSpace, and maybe tell us just a little bit about your background and what made you think about, launching your own tech platform.
Yeah, thanks, Natalie. Pleasure to be here. Um, it's been a long journey to get to this point in working with EventSpace. I started in the virtual events industry back in 2007, working for a company called Citrix Online, supporting products like GoToMeeting and GoToWebinar. And that's where I kind of cut my teeth, if you will, on supporting customers in the virtual event space, helping them to achieve their goals through education and consulting. And I had an opportunity also to do the same type of work over at Zoom. And when I left Zoom in 2019, I started my consulting company called The Webinerd. And after a few years of working that project through the pandemic and all the excitement that came with that, I just noticed a lot of holes in the virtual event space with regard to conferences, larger programs that take place over time, maybe in series or summit type programs, and maybe some potential for creating a platform that gives people more of an opportunity to share and build community around their content rather than kind of an instantiated one-off webinar, having content in a series or conference type setting to bring people together to share around their common interests and knowledge and really build community around content. So that's the goal of EventSpace, is to provide that kind of social experience to accompany the virtual events and the content that folks are putting out into the world. So in a nutshell, EventSpace, from the beginning, the idea was to have a platform that really ties together the various bits of technology that folks use to produce their virtual events and to share their content. And by tying those technologies together with integrations and API, we can create kind of an ecosystem of platforms that work together and share information in a common kind of hub rather than having disparate information in various applications like we have today.
And I mean, I can say from knowing your platform very well, from seeing it, eventspace.com is a fascinating and very scalable platform. So check it out. So Joshua, when you first started, right, when these ideas came to mind and you decided to take the leap of faith and go for it, what did you do? I mean, what were some of your initial challenges as you tried to enter the tech space, and how did you overcome them?
Yeah, even though I came from tech companies, software as a service companies, I was more in a support and consulting role, guiding people through using the platforms, not building the platform. So I'm not an engineer, I'm not a coder. So initially it was very challenging, kind of overwhelming to consider, how do I do this? How do I find the right people to help me build? Do I find the right individual that's interested in my project and can kind of jack of all trades this together? Or do I find a firm that can help to develop and launch the product? What's going to cost more? What is my best option? And ultimately, I decided that using a firm that can provide kind of end-to-end support from development, including project management and front end, back end, full stack development was the way to go. Though it may be a little bit more expensive, considerably more expensive than working with, an individual that might be interested in the project. It felt like the better decision because of the expertise and experience that a firm like yours could bring to a project. So I started, like many people would, on Google and plugging away and trying to find, who best to work with. What am I looking for? What are the qualifications for an organization? And I found clutch.co to be a really great resource. And that's actually how I found JetRockets and a couple of other firms that kind of bubbled up to the top as contenders for taking on this role. What was important to me was actually finding a group that comes with a diversity of experiences and opinions. I didn't want to, well, I don't know, not to sound too crass, but I didn't want to have, just a bunch of white guys from Silicon Valley working on my platform. I needed a group that was going to consider the bigger picture for my project and not just churn out a project like they would any other project. So I was looking for a group that had kind of a unique founder background and also a group that could bring in a diverse group of individuals to work on the platform.
And I very much appreciate you've chosen to work with us. It's been, a very interesting experience. And I definitely agree with you. We've actually done a study about a year ago, how diverse points of views result in a much stronger outcomes in anything, right? I mean, it's, yes, I'm obviously stating out an obvious fact, but even when it comes to software development, having a diversity in genders and backgrounds and ethnicities, it really helps to develop a stronger, a more user-friendly project, really. It does. And so thinking back, at that, as you went along and you've interviewed and you've considered a bunch of different companies, I'm sure you have, and then ultimately deciding to work with JetRockets and then working with us for over a year as you have, what lessons, kind of looking back, what lessons have you learned from this collaboration? Like, what do you think could have gone better? What do you think you could have done better? What do you think we could have done better to make this
Yeah.
more successful?
Yeah, it's just a world of challenges. There's as in the industry, we're going to tell you that there are known unknowns and there are many more unknown unknowns. And it's really hard to contend with all of that and stay confident. Um, so having the support of an experienced team is really crucial in that. It's very easy to bog down into minutia, and having a qualified and engaged project manager is probably one of the most important things that a firm can bring to a founder like me. If we didn't have such an excellent project manager that understood the scope of the project and the ultimate goals, then we could get into well, there are plenty of books out there. We could get into a build trap and just be building what we think is right and maybe not focusing on our ideal users as much as we should. So I think most importantly is to have an understanding of what you want to achieve, a really strong understanding of who your product is going to serve, so that the project manager and the team working with that project manager can carry that understanding through the development process. Without that understanding, again, you get into a cycle of building and building what you think may be useful, what you think will look cool or attract users, and you could be really off base. So doing that research and coming with that understanding of who your ideal client persona is, understanding who that person is and what their needs are, was a really crucial step in the process. And I think honestly that I could have done a better job of that up front. But luckily I had, the support of a great team to help me kind of dial in and focus into the needs of our users rather than what I thought was important for the platform.
Joshua, I really appreciate these words. I often say that one of the things that differentiates us from some of our competitors is that we are not, you know, we're not yes people, meaning that
Definitely not.
when clients ask us to do things, we don't just jump on it and say, yeah, definitely, let us build this new feature and that new feature, and let us build more of these functions for you. We often question and actually try to convince you that perhaps these features are not needed for the immediate launch, right?
Mhm.
I wanted to, again, thank you for appreciating this. I think it's very crucial. So it's kind of, goes back to this whole importance of having a very clear vision for your journey and like knowing what your go-to-market strategy is going to be. And it's very, very important to have that before you even start spending any time or other resources on development of your platform. So
Right.
I'm glad to hear we're on the same page. So how important do you think adaptability and kind of continuous learning are for you as the founder, even though you had a team that you could rely on, and
Mhm.
but how important was that for you personally to stay in the know about what is it that we're building, and understanding the decisions being made by your tech team, and did you feel supported throughout that process?
Yeah, I did feel supported throughout the process, and thank you to you and the team and to our design team that worked on the project from a pretty early stage. It was really crucial that we bring to market the most accessible virtual events platform. We didn't want folks to, come to our site and have a hard time navigating. And so from the very outset, accessibility was forefront in my mind, and how to bring that forward, aside from having large text that's, easy to read, and aside from having an interface that works well with screen readers for the visually impaired and so forth, it was hard to know exactly what accessibility meant and what accessibility in design was going to look like. So having the guidance and expertise of teams and really leaning on them to push to make the most accessible, easy to navigate platform possible was at first a little bit challenging. There were some times where I had to send the designers back to the drawing board a few different times to come up with mock-ups that were going to really meet the standards that we were trying to achieve. In most cases, AAA compliance with accessibility standards, and in some places, AA compliance would have to do. So this is, going into the weeds on everything from contrast between background colors and fonts to layout and interface decisions. I think that was, a really important part of the learning process. I did a lot of reading as well on different topics, um, you know, how to serve the user first rather than building, a Ferrari that, only the top users could possibly use. We wanted to build a Toyota that anybody could get into. So understanding how to do that took a lot of reading and study and learning from the experience and honestly the failures of others that are, there are plenty of founders out there that have written books about their failures, and it's really important to consider that and understand, what could go wrong? How do I avoid this? How do I make improvements on the experience of others? So I did spend a lot of time reading and a lot of time in back and forth with the design and the project teams to make sure that we were achieving the best results that we possibly could. And I think it comes through in EventSpace. When you visit our platform at eventspace.com, you'll see that everything is easy to understand, and step by step, the platform guides you through the process of creating events and producing, your objective rather than just the standard out of the mold virtual event.
Absolutely, couldn't agree more. Very easy to use and navigate platform. I used it myself for one of the webinars I was putting on launching a non-tech, launching a tech platform as a non-tech founders. And yeah, two things you said right now that really I think are important to highlight and repeat again is the involvement. Even though you were what we would consider a non-tech founder, you still were very much involved in the development process of your platform. Is that so?
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe I'm a bit of a control freak, but through the entire process, I was very hands-on. And when I didn't understand why a certain decision was being made or a certain feel like I was lined up with the team and the project manager, why are we choosing this order of operations and building? I was very keen to ask questions and find out why. And your team and our design team were very happy to share the reason behind those decisions. And I think it's very easy for someone in my position to say, here are the requirements, go get it done and hope for the best. But being deeply involved, being in close contact with the project was really important for me. And I think leads to a more successful outcome.
100%. We always say this. And I think when we first met, I also told you, Joshua, be aware that if we end up working together, you're going to have to be part of the team.
Yeah.
And ultimately, I absolutely agree with you. We want to make sure that all of our founders are an integral part of the development team, because at the end of the day, you are the ones who know your product best. We can make technical recommendations, but you are the ones who have the vision, and you are the ones who are driving this forward. And there is no way around it. You have to be involved. And I bet you spent a lot of time, right? Like, did this become your, like, I don't know, maybe not full-time job, but probably part-time at least?
Yeah, it was there was a big time investment. So having that time to focus on the project is really important. Like I said, you can't really just give somebody your objectives and your goals for a project and expect them to come up with an outcome that really matches up. You really need to be hands-on and involved. And you need to be willing to ask questions and challenge, and you need to be willing to be challenged and to have your decisions questioned and to be able to explain in detail why you need something the way that you need it. And, doing the research to back it up is important, but really, I'd say most importantly is just having that spirit of collaboration in the process is really crucial. It's not enough just to say, I need A, B, and C, go get it done.
Yes, certainly. And then the second thing you said in previous question was about failures and how you try to learn from other people's experiences, right? And
Hmm.
I personally have a belief that there is no such thing as a failure. I think anything that happens, no matter what the outcome is, right? Like, there's always going to be an outcome. It may be something that you were hoping to achieve, or it may be something different,
Yeah,
but a certain outcome at the end of any process, at the end of any journey. And I think it's important to use those outcomes as experiences, right? As an opportunity to learn something new and maybe do something differently next time, right?
right.
So can you talk to me a bit, if you're would be open to sharing, what are your next steps with EventSpace at this point? What do you feel? Where are you today, and where are you hoping to be within the foreseeable future?
Yeah, I mean, speaking of failures and surprises, nothing's going to work out exactly the way you thought it would from the outset. There's always going to be a challenge that comes in, and you're always going to need to adapt and make compromises to find success. So, if you don't come from a tech company background and you haven't heard people say fail fast and fail often, then, having that first failure or that first really big challenge that maybe seen as a setback is going to be maybe a little devastating. So being able to accept failures as an opportunity to learn and improve is a really important part of being, a builder, if you will. So as far as next steps with EventSpace, we are solidly on a version 1 of the platform. We started building from scratch with JetRockets. We started with nothing, and now we have a solid version 1 of the service. And I look forward to developing to a version 2. But for the time being, our focus is really around gaining users, having an understanding of how people are using the platform. Are they using it as we've expected, or are they trying new things that we didn't anticipate? And then collecting that feedback so that we can make a real educated effort in that version 2 to bring more of what those users need and value to the platform, instead of, again, just finding what we think would be the next big bell or whistle to add to the platform. We really want to develop with an educated, feedback-driven perspective on what's next. So gaining users is really the highest priority. And we do have a seed funding round open where we are looking to raise funds for the platform. But I think, it's been kind of a challenging environment for virtual events in general. There's been, a perceived downturn in the industry. And, just to be perfectly candid, we missed a big wave with the virtual events industry because we started developing after the pandemic was over. And we didn't come to market until, 2023. And so timing is really important in launching a platform like ours. And so because we're a little bit behind that curve, we've got more work to do to prove to people that, this is still, an important part of your business, and virtual events aren't going away. Sure, there's been a little bit of a downturn in the excitement and buzz around virtual events, but they're still a staple in business and even in people's personal lives now, in entertainment and community building. So it's kind of the next big challenge, is just making sure that we can get that message out and get it out to the people that are going to really fit our ideal client personas, so that we can continue to develop the best platform that we can for those users.
Speaking of ideal client, just in a couple of words, who is your ideal client?
Currently we're really pushing the software into the nonprofit space. We want to really cultivate in the nonprofit space an opportunity for virtual events to become more of a mainstay in donor relations and donor cultivation, and really helping people that do this important work that is often overlooked to raise the funds that they need to get their message out, express to their supporters how important their support is, and show their successes. So really looking at nonprofit decision makers, executive directors, down to event professionals. And then in the B2B space, of course, event professionals, firms that are partnering with organizations to produce events, or even just an in-house event producer. It doesn't have to be somebody that focuses specifically on virtual events. We want folks that are willing to try something new that they haven't done before and experiment. So those two personas. And then also we have a good fit for folks that are content producers, whether it's educators in the wellness space, or otherwise authors, podcast producers, and so forth, folks that put out content that want to build a conversation and community around that content. So not just virtual events, but virtual events and content with the objective of building community and having a discrete environment where, you don't have the next advertised item on YouTube or whatever platform you can think of, where users can really control their traffic and start that journey for their users through their own website, for instance, instead of sending their traffic to a third party. So content creators, business to business, event professionals, and nonprofits are really who we're targeting right now.
All right. Well, I hope at least one of those or more will listen to this video or, this episode and will reach out to you. And it's very easy to find you. It's eventspace.com. It's an amazing domain name. So
Very
remember,
fortunate to have that domain. Yeah.
absolutely. So, Joshua, thank you so much for sharing your experience. I really appreciate your, agreeing to talk to me today. Before we conclude, do you have anything else, any closing remarks or insights that you'd like to share with, other potential non-tech founders?
Sure. Yeah. Gosh, it's hard to know where to begin. There's so much that you could possibly say. If you're just getting started with the process, I encourage you to talk to as many firms as you possibly can to find out, who's going to be the best team to help you bring your project to light. There are going to be challenges along the way. You are going to feel like it's not working, like it's going to fall apart, like the wheels just won't stay on that machine. But you've got to really have a strong foundation of understanding your core objectives to fall back on in those times when you're feeling maybe a little bit lost, or maybe things just aren't clicking right now. Really fall back to those core principles, the reason why you're building, to push through and get to that next phase, because there's always the next phase and there's always the next conversation to have. And it is really you that needs to be in the driver's seat of that whole decision-making process. So don't be afraid of failures. Learn from them. Don't be afraid to challenge and speak up when things aren't lining up, and really come at it with a boldness and a courage that is kind of unflappable, so that you can push through those challenging moments and achieve the best results for the users that you're building for.
Wow, very inspiring.
I wish I always felt that way all the time, but yeah, that's the best advice I can give people.
It's easy to be very wise in hindsight, right?
Isn't it? Yeah.
Yes. Thank you. I really appreciate this again. I appreciate you sharing your journey.
My
Thank you.
pleasure, Natalie, and thank you for the support of your team over the years. It's been really invaluable, and I look forward to coming in and developing that version 2 of EventSpace as soon as we can.
So do I and the team. Absolutely. And we're here for you in the meantime to support you with anything else you need.
Absolutely. Really appreciate it.